And for our last category today, your first question, try and fit it again in that 1 minute, but what is your dream goal in life?
Oh, that's a big one. I could talk on about it for hours, but I would love to be in Congress. Like, I'd love to be a congresswoman and advocate for either reform in the educational system or prison reform, or maybe even being a lawyer. I mean, life after high school is like really scary. I know a lot of high school students can relate, but I do have a lot of goals, and they mostly consist of reform and change within our, government.
Awesome. And Roa?
So for me, a dream goal of mine, right outside of high school, I want to continue to organize. Organizing is something that I've been doing throughout my high school career, organizing for justice, organizing for change and progressive changes. We're doing it here at this table. But I want to continue to organize. I want to continue to be an advocate for change in my community and outside of the community. And I do want to work to end up in Congress or in the US Senate, because I do believe that change can and will happen there. I believe that with progressive leaders, with strong leaders like what we have in the Board of Education and like the student member of the board, can also be implemented throughout my entire career and throughout my entire life. And I want to make sure that we're fighting for everyone, that we're including everyone, and that we're fighting for real change. So that's my goal in life.
Awesome.
Thank you, Roa. Thank you, Melissa. And the final question of our Q&A today is, what experiences have led you to want to become the student member of the board? And we'll start off with Roa.
So I can answer this question for hours, but I always tell the story, but when I was in middle school, before we had a general election, there was a student member of the board voting forum, and students were selected and invited to go down to that forum. And I remember going there, and I remember watching the SMOB candidates speak, watching them answer questions, and I was 13, I was in 8th grade, and I remember looking up, and I knew that I wanted to be the SMOB. I knew that I was going to prepare myself and work to be the SMOB, because I wanted to be that advocate. I wanted to be that representative, and I wanted to be the representation that I had deserved, and the BCPS, and the representation that I know BCPS deserves. And since then, I've organized just racial justice rallies, I've organized for change, and I've worked within student leadership to fight for legislative action, fight for policies that are actually on the Board of Education. I've testified on the Board of Education, and I think that's truly what prepared me for this position, knowing that the change can and will happen with students. And I am willing to fight for that. I have, and I always will.
Thank you, Roa. And finally, Masa.
Yeah, so actually, this is it's of course like what led me to become the student member of the board, but in middle school, saw the dress code, and I was like, this needs to change, in Parkville Middle to be specific, and I was like, I went to the principal, I got a whole petition, I had students sign it, and I was like, this is misogynistic, this is highly targeted towards women, and it needs to change, and I brought it to the school, and they completely dismissed it. And so then I was like, okay, imagine a 13-year-old girl like logging on to Google, or like not logging on to Google, going on to Google and searching up platforms to enact change within your public school system. And then I saw, the Baltimore County Student Council, I saw like all these platforms, and basically I saw a student member of the board. I was like, okay, fine, I'm too young for this. Then in freshman year, I saw Joshua Hamza, and I was like, this is amazing, this is what I want to do. And that moment, I was like, I want to enact change. I want to enact change within our public school systems. And initially, in the beginning of my junior year, I applied for board of selected students, and I was on there because I wanted to voice my concerns. And then I was like, what about SMOB? Well, I remember like watching Joshua Hamza. I remember watching Christian Thomas and Logan Dubel. And I was like, this is what I want to do, and this is something that I don't want to do this just for a resume. I want to advocate for the students. I want their voices to be on the Board of Education and heard, addressed, and advocated for, heard, and addressed.